Jason Candle and the Toledo Rockets are set for an interesting year. The 10 returning players that we'll talk about today either made a big impact and have a chip on their shoulder, or they bring in some talent that's going to be impactful. And after a disappointing end to their season where they didn't win the MAC championship, there's definitely something to prove this year. And we'll talk about what those players can do to take that next step and what needs to happen for them to win that championship. We start with the passing attack. Jerwan Newton has been an absolute menace to cover in the slot. He's on that smaller side when it comes to wide receivers, but he is someone who can make a major impact. 696 yards and 9 touchdowns. With a new quarterback coming into play, we'll see what happens in terms of chemistry. We'll see what happens in terms of production, but this is the guy you can definitely rely on. This is definitely a guy that can make a major impact. And if you're looking for a reliable player downfield, Newton gives you a great option. Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball. Now, again, Toledo lost a handful of players, but they return a good chunk, especially on defense. DeAndre Reagan is another one of those players that will just continue to keep that tradition of Toledo's talent being really good and getting them to the top of the MAC. 8 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. I think that he could be set for an even bigger year. I think that he has the potential and the skill set to be an absolute monster for Toledo. Again, this is a team that has a chip on their shoulder. Yes, they had a successful year in 2023, but they are not satisfied with how things ended. They are looking to take a step forward and they are looking to improve. Defensively, there's not a ton that they could do better. Defending the run, they finished 63rd, so that's probably one area they'd like to improve at. But a guy like DeAndre Reagan knows how to get to the quarterback and can make a major impact in defending the run better in 2024. Another wide receiver, again, on the smaller side, but still an impact player, Junior Vanderas III, 5'8", 175 pounds. Again, Toledo is not going to have these physically imposing wide receivers this year. Maybe they have a guy that's going to step up, but right now the two proven guys are on the smaller side, if you will. 664 yards, 4 touchdowns. So even regardless, size at this point isn't a huge factor in determining success because Toledo has a number of smaller players that can get the job done. Vanderas is a player who can have an even bigger year if the quarterback position gets sorted out. And with losing DeQuan Finn, you're going to have a little bit of a step back early on. And this is a group that finished 69th in passing. So if you can find a way to gel with that new quarterback early, then you're going to find that life is very good for this team early in the season. Now, one of those players that could be that big frame player is Anthony Torres, 6'6", 250 pounds, someone who could take a step forward. And honestly, when you look at explosiveness, 17.8 yards per catch on just 26 catches last year. So maybe this is the answer to not having that wide receiver. And, maybe he is more of that Y receiver or Y tight end where you're more of a receiver than a tight end, but he's got a good frame in terms of being a contributor to the rushing attack as well. So this is someone who will, I think, have a big year, maybe have an even bigger year because of his skill set, because of his frame. So that's going to be fun to watch. What can he do to help this team? Because this is going to be a different year. Just because you have the two wide receivers returning with more production than him doesn't mean that he is going to be the third guy. He could be the leading receiver this year if he finds more chemistry with the new quarterback. If you're able to find a way to get open and the quarterback looks for you more often, then that changes things in terms of production. But one thing is for sure, I think that this passing attack will be much better, assuming the quarterback position figures itself out because of guys like Torres, because of guys like Vanderas and Newton. This is going to be a really fun group. The secondary is where things get really interesting to me because you lose a number of veteran players on the defensive side of the ball, specifically in the secondary, but getting Max and Hook back was a great, I wouldn't say addition, but a great retention. 69 tackles last year, 3 interceptions. He is someone who has been playing a big role for Toledo for multiple years now, and now he gets a chance to play more of that leadership role to get everybody else up to speed. You're looking at some inexperienced players, but they have talented players on this roster, and a guy like Hook is going to get them going real quick. And if they can do that, then you're looking at a team that will, I don't know if they can be as good as they were last year with the talent they lost. Losing Kenyon Mitchell at cornerback was obviously going to hurt. Nate Bauer's departure was going to hurt, but Maxon Hook returning gives them a little bit of a transition player that can help this group not get to the same level, but at least not take a huge step back. The player to keep an eye on the interior is Darius Alexander. When you lose Judge Culpepper, you knew that was going to hurt, but Darius Alexander comes in with really good size, 6'4", 310 pounds, a big body that maybe isn't going to have the best production, but he will be someone that plugs things up for the guys around him. 5.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks last year. Again, Judge Culpepper is a huge loss, but you have a player like Darius Alexander who can step up in a big way. And if he does that, this defense is going to be fun to watch once again. And a player who benefits from that kind of production up front is Daniel Bolden. And you look at what he did last year, it's hard to think that he could do much better. Now, you'd like to see him maybe be a little bit more disruptive, but 94 tackles was very impressive. 6.5 tackles for loss. Again, you'd like to see him get in the backfield a little bit more. That says a lot of good things about what this Toledo defense is doing. But again, you're looking at not taking a huge step back, and the guys up front are the ones that get that thing started. Losing Penny Boone was always going to hurt, but Jacquez Stewart coming back gave them a little bit of comfort knowing that he has played a big role for them before. He has been a freshman player of the year and someone who can keep that thing going, keep the rushing attack going. Again, this is a group that finished 16th in rushing. This is a group that knew how to run the football. And obviously, the offensive line turnover is probably a big concern. But Stewart is someone who can be a big time playmaker and as a returner. He averaged 29.1 yards per return last year, and he'll be a major impact player in that regard as well. So even if he doesn't have a huge impact running the football, we know that Toledo's going to find ways to get him more involved. Another receiver to keep an eye on is Larry Stevens, a little bit underrated at this point because we know the three guys that we talked about in Newton, in Vandeross, and Torres at tight end. This is someone who could take a step forward. Again, we're talking about pretty much a brand, I don't want to say brand new offense, but you have a new quarterback, which means that you either have to learn how he throws the football. You have to learn how to run your routes a little bit different because you know what he's looking for. And maybe you find better chemistry. We have no idea what the new guy is going to look for. We know that this Toledo team has experience. We know that guys like Stevens, who don't have the most production, have talent to obviously see the field. And maybe you find a way to get from more of a rotational player into the go-to guy. And so Stevens is someone to keep an eye on, and it'll be really fun to see how he develops, how he can take that next step. And it all relies on this next guy, and that's Tucker Gleason. Replacing DeQuan Finn was never going to be easy. Fortunately, Tucker Gleason does not play the same game as DeQuan Finn, which is good because you don't want, when you have a player like DeQuan Finn. Now, granted, was DeQuan Finn a legendary player for Toledo? No, but he was a really good player who did a lot of good things as a passer and as a runner. And Tucker Gleason is not going to be that guy. He's not going to be this elite runner who's going to run for 100 yards a game. This is someone who's more of a drop back passer and needs to figure out his accuracy. 50.9 percentage last year. And you're looking at a big set of shoes to fill with Finn going to Baylor. Gleason has the talent around him to make his life very easy. He has the talent around him where he doesn't need to be a hero, at least not early on. If you're going to win a championship, you need your quarterback to step up. I don't know if Toledo has the talent they did last year to have the quarterback be more of I don't want to call it a liability, but not as important, not as necessary. But when you look at what Toledo has this year, you have an offensive line that's going through a transitional period where you lost multiple multi-year starters. You have your top running back depart, your quarterback departs. This offense has a lot of things to figure out. The defense, the secondary loses a ton of elite talent, and the front seven loses a couple of pieces that will make this challenging, more challenging than last year. And yes, the MAC lost a lot of talent. Everybody did. But Toledo's in a good position to make some noise. And if Tucker Gleason can figure things out early on and get off to a hot start, then his confidence will build. This passing attack will be electric, and Toledo will be right back where they want to be.